Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice is directed by Zack Snyder and it stars Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill, Gal Gadot, Jesse Eisenberg, Jeremy Irons, and basically every other actor playing every other cast member in the DC universe. On its surface, this movie primarily revolves around Superman and the repercussions from Man of Steel, and he's under attack, he's under fire, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding him and essentially his existence. This movie picks up right after Man of Steel, but it's not necessarily a sequel to Man of Steel, which is something that I would have preferred. This movie takes place while Man of Steel is still happening, and it shows a different perspective from Ben Affleck, who plays Bruce Wayne, Batman, and that was something that I really enjoyed. Ben Affleck absolutely nails it. This is the best Batman costume we've seen on screen, and I think this might be the best Bruce Wayne we've seen on screen. I won't say Batman, but I would say Bruce Wayne. Jeremy Irons' Alfred is fantastic. I wish we would have seen about 10 minutes more of him in the movie because he was just awesome. And he's someone who, while the whole movie was going on, I kept thinking, I actually would have liked to see him as Batman. Not Alfred, but I would have liked to see him as Batman. Gal Gadot's performance as Wonder Woman was pretty good, I would say. She's basically given a glorified cameo that's just stretched throughout the movie. And unfortunately, if you've seen the trailer that everyone thought gave everything away, it basically did give everything away, including her more or less introduction to the film, which was something that I was pretty fearful of. Do I think her character was necessary in this movie? No. But it was cool to see her finally on the big screen in live action, although I wish we would have maybe seen Wonder Woman, the standalone film, before this, because you do see some of her abilities and some of her character traits that you're thinking, I just wish I would have had a little bit more of that. And to get a little taste before you get the whole movie, it just felt off to me. It felt like we should have been able to see her to really appreciate the cameo that she receives in this movie. Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor was an interesting casting choice, and it was an interesting direction for them to take the character, and I did not enjoy it as much as I thought I would. I actually really enjoyed his, little sneak peeks in the trailers, and the comedy that he gave to the handshake and kind of tapping Clark Kent on the shoulder. I thought it worked well in the trailer, but in the context of the film and how they build off of that, I found it to be more annoying than anything, and I kind of was looking at my watch whenever he was on screen and just kind of waiting for the next time to where we could just move on to the next scene. The best way I could describe his character is it was like watching a 1990s supervillain on screen, and it just did not work for me. The best way I could describe it would be a combination of like Johnny Depp mixed with Nicolas Cage mixed with someone with Tourette syndrome. It did not work for me. It was this OCD, germaphobe, insane kind of portrayal, and it was something that it was an interesting idea, but the execution just did not work for me. As I mentioned before, when something was not quite working for me on screen, all I had to do was wait about 5 minutes to look for something else, because unfortunately this movie has about 8 different movies within Batman v Superman, and it just is jarring. There's too much stuff going on, and the things that are going on are never fully fulfilled. You get half storylines. The movie does not focus on being a movie. Batman v Superman feels like just a stepping stone to a bigger project. It doesn't feel like a standalone movie throughout its entirety. The first half plays more like a political thriller and kind of a mystery and dealing with Batman. And then the second half is just, it was like playing a video game. It was this ADD insanity that I just wasn't really feeling. Unfortunately, the trailer gives away basically every beat of this film, and unfortunately there's nothing new. There's nothing outside of that. The only thing that I was really looking forward to were some of the cameos from different Justice League members, and they were handled so poorly that at one point I closed my eyes and just looked down. They are handled so lazily and poorly, and they force feed them to you in just the most lazy, mind-numbing way possible that I couldn't believe this actually made it to screen. If you've seen the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about, and after you've seen the movie, unfortunately, there's a good chance you'll agree. I liked seeing the characters on screen in their small parts, but the way they present it to you is just, it's like something that maybe a fifth grader would write if they were like, here, you gotta introduce these characters, let's see how you would do it. It's the worst. It was one of the lowlights of the film for me, which is saying something because it was one of the highlights that I was really anticipating. This is my biggest complaint about the film, in that everything is so sloppy. There's about 30 minutes missing from this version to the director's R-rated cut, and honestly, I don't know if that's necessary, because this movie feels about 20 minutes too long anyway, and what they did cut out of that 30 minutes to save for the rated R version was all stuff that was necessary to actually further the plot along. Things are glossed over or just flat out not answered in this film, and it's so frustrating, especially when you're jumping from one thing to the next. Nothing seems to flow cohesively together, and the things that do are underwhelming, and they're things that I really never cared about in the first place. Like every Zack Snyder movie, the film is great looking. The cinematography is great, the special effects were phenomenal, I loved the costume design for the most part. Everything I enjoyed visually. There were some shots that didn't quite work for me when they tried to be artsy that did work in Man of Steel, just came off out of place in Batman v Superman. When it comes to the story, it's where it gets sloppy and it gets jarring and it gets confusing, because you're moving along and then you veer over here and then you're invested in this storyline and then you get tossed over here. I never felt grounded in the story because everything is moving so fast that I never really cared at all. I never felt the stakes in this movie, and I never felt like any character really was in any danger throughout the film. I know it seems like I'm harping on this film, but overall, there were some things that just did not work for me. The things that were good, in my opinion, were great. I loved Ben Affleck, I loved Jeremy Irons as Alfred, and I felt like a standalone Batman movie is what I care more about than even the Justice League movie or this movie at all. I would have much rather had seen a Man of Steel 2 or a standalone Batman movie to set this up, rather than having it be just thrown in my face and expected for me to care, when in reality, I've never been introduced to any of these characters before. The action overall was well done. The climactic Batman vs Superman fight was awesome. I loved the beats to it, although I wish it could have been extended just a little bit longer. And the resolution to the fight was something that made me literally laugh out loud in the theater, and I don't know how it made it from page to screen. If you've seen it, you'll know, but the thought process to how they resolve their conflict should have never made it past the idea phase, because it just did not work for me. Actually, the action scene that stands out the most to me is the one we saw in the trailer of Batman taking down the floor of thugs, and he's choke slamming people and he's taking on all the bad guys at once. That was my favorite action scene of the film, even more so than the Batman vs Superman fight that we were supposed to care about all along. Another aspect of the film that I absolutely loved was the soundtrack. Hans Zimmer and Junkie XL, Tom Holkenborg, did a fantastic job on this soundtrack, and it's actually one of the only soundtracks that I went and picked up a physical copy of. Overall, I thought the movie was okay. I can't say that it's a bad movie per se, but it had so much potential. But if they could have focused on making a standalone, cohesive movie, I felt like it would have been just so much better than it was. I felt like they focused so much on setting up things down the road in one movie and cramming everything that they could into a runtime that it fell flat. Overall, I give it a 3 out of 5. I thought Ben Affleck's performance as Batman was absolutely terrifying. Outside of that, I never felt anything for the characters. I wish they could have focused more on a standalone film with Batman and a Man of Steel 2 before thrusting everything they had into one movie and just banking on everything in the future for it to work. Do I think their movies going forward are in trouble? No, but this had so much potential to be just an excellent movie, and to me they missed a lot of the marks. Anyways, leave your thoughts and comments down below. Please let me know what you thought of this film. I feel like it's one that's going to be pretty divisive, and I feel like it's going to be discussed quite a bit over the next few months. Let me know what you think down below. If you would, leave a like and a subscribe, and thank you very much for watching.